Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all honor, praise, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rachakodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, rule well. Peace and salutations to the elect scattered abroad. All right, this is the Brother Barbazal here with a lesson, and Lord willing, it's edifying. All right, so, today the title of this lesson will be, judgment will start at the house of the Lord, right? Going into, our people, all right? And as we know, the main talk, right, in the headlines of, national news is, the whole North Carolina train attack. There were several brothers who did videos on this situation, all right? But, this just goes to show with, with everything going on that Esau, he ready to put that great wrath on you Jakes, man. All right. This guy Trump, who we believe to be in the spirit Nero, he's coming down and cracking on you Jakes, man. You 2/3, you YNs, right? These different, wicked of our people. All right. He's coming down on you, man. All right. And, as we can see, whether this situation, whether it was set up or not, all right, Esau, he's pushing this situation, all right, as further justification to show that, that Jake is the problem with America, justifying himself, to come down with that great wrath, against Jake, all right. So we're gonna read a little bit of this article, and we're gonna go into the scriptures, all right. So it says, suspect in Charlotte train stabbing that killed a Ukrainian refugee is charged with a federal crime. Here's what we know. The suspect in the grisly slaying of a young woman on a Charlotte light rail train now faces a federal charge in the case that has turned into a political lightning rod in the country where she had come to seek safety. Irina Zarutska fled Ukraine in 2022 with her mother, sister, and brother to escape the war with Russia, and she quickly embraced her new life in the United States, her obituary states. But on the night of August 22nd, moments after she texted her boyfriend to say she would be home soon, a man sitting behind her on the train stabbed her 3 times in the throat in an unprovoked attack. All right, so, this guy obviously, has some sort of spirits on him, right? Some sort of, to be a like a spirit of vengeance, right? Even though, we ain't, we don't agree with what he did, it was a wicked act, all right? It's not something that, a man of the Lord would do, all right? We understand that this is all the will of the Lord at the end of the day, all right? And I was watching the elder brother, Manata Zakba from South Carolina. He made a great point, going into the situation, just saying that, you can't escape the judgment of the Lord, right? Because, she escaped or pretty much fled Ukraine, to avoid the war, right? But then, came to America to be, targeted in basically a random attack, just going on to the train like a normal day, and just out of nowhere, where Jake goes and, puts her to death, man. So that just goes to show you that, you can't escape the judgment of the Lord. I thought that was a great point as well. All right, that's why, these different Jakes, who say, who want to flee America to flee the destruction or to flee, America doctrine, that's off. All right, because you can't escape the judgment that the Lord is going to put forth, man. All right. It says the suspect, 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown, had a long rap sheet and now faces charges of first-degree murder and a federal charge of committing an act causing death on a mass transportation system. The federal charge comes with the possibility of the death penalty, a punishment that President Donald Trump said he supported in this case. U.S. Attorney Russ Ferguson said on Tuesday prosecutors were still investigating the case. Democratic and Republican leaders have traded barbs on who or what is to blame. The debate simmers against the backdrop of the Trump administration vowing to fight crime by deploying federal troops in predominantly Democratic cities, meaning he's coming after you, Jakes. All right, these different cities, he's pretty much putting the National Guard, right? Like cities like Chicago, DC, looking for Philadelphia, right? Certain cities where mainly Jake dwell, right? And pretty much he's pushing forth any type of wickedness that Jake may do, whether he sets it up or not, and pushes it as the narrative, all right, in order to get at our people, all right, because Esau, he has to come with that great wrath and he has to push forth his agenda, all right, and soon, we're going to be fully in Jacob's trouble, man, all right. We got to keep signs, we got to stay circumspect, right, stay diligent, all right. Another thing that's been happening as well, people have been getting arrested, for making certain comments on YouTube, all right? So we're seeing the persecution is coming, all right? And we ain't going to be out there on the highways and hedges, all right, and we ain't going to be out on the highways and hedges forever, man, all right? Soon, the truth being preached, won't happen, all right? Because the famine of the word has to come. All right, so we in a very, very, prophetical times, man. We at the end of the end. All right, so this is going to be the first scripture, 1 Peter 4:17. For the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of Yahweh, and if it first begin at us, what shall shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of Yahweh? So yeah, that's why, of course, we see that. A bunch of Jake getting judged, right? Esau getting ready to put that wrath on Jake, all right? Because the Lord is coming to, judge his own people first, all right? And then, the heathens, will get their judgment, all right? But, it's going to have to start with our people first, because they choose to be wicked, all right? They choose not to take heed to the message of the prophets, that the Lord sent, all right? So, they're going to have to get the judgment first, all right? So this is Sirach 28:28. It says, there be spirits that are created for vengeance, which in their fury lay on sore strokes. In the time of destruction, they pour out their force and appease the wrath of him that made them. And yeah, that was definitely a spirit of vengeance, right? To just, unprovokingly, go out and, just stab, what it seems to be a Edomite woman, right? What it seems to be an Edomite woman, just, out of nowhere, just on the train, just doing it just like that, that's definitely a, spirit of vengeance, and that's the Lord, man. All right. And that's how we got to see it, man. So that's why it's important to fear the Lord, man. All right, because anything can just happen. The Lord, however the Lord judges you, it's going to be a way that you least expect it. That's why it's important, not to play around, while you in this thing. All right, to have a fear of the Lord. The scripture's going to fearing the Lord is the first step to be accepted by Him. You see? So let's get another precept. This is Salakia, Ephesians 5:15. See then ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Yeah. And we really have to, take account to the times that we in. All right. You don't want to go out and, put yourself in a unwise situation, right? A dangerous situation, going out clubs where a bunch of, niggas hang out at, All right, just going into a bunch of sketchy different spots. All right, go and if you got to go out, go to the store. Go in, go out. Keep your head on a swivel because we living in evil times, man, and the love of many is waxing cold. You see, so we got to be circumspect. It says redeeming the time because the days are evil, and yeah, the days are evil, man. Esau coming with that great wrath, Jake wicked as ever. You got YNs, all right. You got people out here, getting judged. You got people out here just, murdering in cold blood for, no reason. You see? So you got to stay circumspect, all right, and be wise and move wisely, all right. Do your best to, stay out of the way, so to speak, and be diligent in the Lord, man. Stay prayed up, as they would say, right? Pray to the Lord. Do your fast, all right. Do whatever you got to do to make sure your faith stays strong, man. All right, because we coming into some evil, scary times, man. All right. So I got one more scripture, and then we're gonna end it. This is 1 Peter 5:8. It says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." All right, and that's this man Esau. Be sober, be vigilant. All right, so we gotta we gotta make sure we're not asleep during these times. Keep going into the prophecies. All right, and filtering them through the scriptures. All right, keeping watch. All right. I'm going to read it again. 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. And he looking to devour these different jakes, man. All right. And it don't matter, even if you ain't just a YN just walking around, just carrying switches, Pookie, Ray. He's looking for you different jakes too, that thinking that you on board with Trump and what he got going on. He coming after you. He coming after you as well, man. You ain't exempt. Niggas like Anton Daniels and guys like that. All right, you ain't exempt from the judgment of the Lord. All right, because you scoff and scorn against the prophets. All right, and you not a believer in Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. All right? The Lord is only going to keep those who have the faith and keep the faith. Okay? And it's going out there, right, risking their lives to do so, right? Sacrificing to do so. All right? In truth and sincerity. You see? So if you ain't right with the Lord, man, this could happen to this could happen to anyone. All right. That's why it's important to keep the faith, stay circumspect. All right, be diligent. All right, and not tarry to turn to the Lord, because we understand that the scriptures say peace and safety, and then sudden destruction. You see. But that'll do it with the lesson. So with that, I'd like to give all the honor and praise and glory unto Yahweh B'Hashem, Yahweh Shah B'Hashem, Barak HaKodash. Shalom.